In the winter of 1929, a prince died quietly in his villa, taking with him secrets that had haunted the German imperial court for decades. His name was Prince Heinrich of Prussia, and for 67 years he had lived a double life that would have destroyed empires and toppled thrones. To the world, he was Kaiser Wilhelm II's younger brother, a decorated naval admiral, a dutiful husband. But according to persistent rumors that circulated through European courts, behind closed doors, he was something far more dangerous. A man who loved other men, in an age when such desires could mean exile, disgrace, or worse. The whispers had followed him since childhood. Court observers noted his gentle manner, his preference for poetry over warfare, his unusually close friendships with beautiful young officers. Historians suggest that Heinrich represented everything the rigid Prussian military state feared. Sensitivity in a world that demanded brutality, authenticity in a court built on deception, and love that dared not speak its name. This is the story of the prince who lived in the shadows of his brother's empire, navigating the treacherous waters of royal duty while harboring desires that could have shattered the very foundations of German imperial power. If you're fascinated by these hidden royal histories, make sure to subscribe for more untold stories about the secret lives that shaped our world. Prince Albert Wilhelm Heinrich was born on August 14, 1862, in the new Palace of Potsdam, the third son of Crown Prince Friedrich Wilhelm of Prussia and Princess Victoria of the United Kingdom. From the moment he drew breath, Heinrich's fate was sealed by blood, duty, and the expectations of an empire that would tolerate no weakness. His birth came at a time when the Prussian military machine was reshaping Europe, and every prince was expected to be a soldier, every royal child a weapon in the service of German greatness. But even as a child, contemporaries noted that Heinrich was different from his brothers. Where his older brother Wilhelm was aggressive and demanding, Heinrich was thoughtful and reserved. Palace tutors recorded that he preferred books to battle games, music to military drills. His governess, documented in court records, observed that the young prince had an unusual sensitivity that set him apart from other royal children. He formed intense friendships with his tutors and seemed more comfortable in the company of artists and intellectuals than with the military officers who surrounded the Prussian court. By the age of 10, according to family letters that survived in the royal archives, Heinrich had already begun to display the traits that would later fuel decades of speculation. He was described as delicate, artistic, and possessing an refined sensibility that worried his parents. In the brutal world of Prussian masculinity, such qualities were not just unusual, they were dangerous. But the young prince's true nature would soon face its greatest test, as his family prepared to forge him into something he was never meant to be, a perfect Prussian officer. The question was whether Heinrich could survive the transformation, or if his authentic self would destroy everything the royal family had worked to build. In the marble corridors of the new palace, where every footstep echoed with the weight of imperial expectation, young Heinrich learned his first lesson about survival, the art of becoming invisible. While his older brother Wilhelm commanded attention through tantrums and demands, Heinrich discovered that safety lay in silence, in becoming the perfect shadow of what others wanted to see. The education of a Prussian prince was designed to break the spirit and rebuild it as a weapon of state. Heinrich's tutors, appointed by his grandfather, Kaiser Wilhelm II, were military men who believed that softness was a disease to be cured through discipline. According to surviving educational records, Heinrich's daily schedule began at dawn with military exercises, followed by lessons in strategy, German history, and the sacred duty of imperial service. But court observers noted something troubling. Where other princes thrived under this brutal regimen, Heinrich seemed to wither. His governess, Fräulein von Krokow, wrote in private letters discovered decades later that the young prince possessed an almost feminine delicacy of feeling that made him unsuitable for the harsh realities of royal life. She documented incidents where Heinrich would retreat to hidden alcoves in the palace library, losing himself in poetry and romantic literature that his tutors considered dangerous corruptions of proper masculine development. The relationship with his brother Wilhelm became the defining trauma of Heinrich's childhood. Wilhelm, who would later become Kaiser Wilhelm II, was everything their grandfather demanded in a future emperor: aggressive, domineering, and ruthlessly ambitious. Contemporary accounts describe how Wilhelm would mock Heinrich's gentle nature, calling him weak and effeminate in front of court officials. Palace servants, interviewed years later by historians, recalled Wilhelm forcing Heinrich into humiliating competitions designed to expose his younger brother's physical inadequacy and sensitive temperament. But it was Heinrich's friendships that truly alarmed the royal family. Court records indicate that he formed unusually intense bonds with his male tutors and pages, relationships that historians suggest crossed the boundaries of typical royal protocol. One documented incident involved Heinrich's attachment to a young music teacher named Klaus Richter, whose sudden dismissal from court sparked rumors that persist in historical scholarship today. Princess Victoria, Heinrich's mother, confided in letters to Queen Victoria that she feared her son's unnatural inclinations would bring scandal upon the family. These maternal concerns, preserved in the Royal Correspondence Archive, reveal a mother torn between love for her child and terror of what his true nature might mean for the dynasty. By his 14th birthday, the palace had reached a consensus. Heinrich needed to be saved from himself. The solution was as predictable as it was cruel. The Imperial German Navy would either make him into a proper Prussian prince, or it would break him completely. As Heinrich prepared for his naval training, those closest to him wondered if the gentle boy who loved poetry and formed dangerous friendships could survive what awaited him on the unforgiving seas. What none of them realized was that the Navy would not cure Heinrich of his forbidden desires. It would teach him exactly how to hide them. The Imperial German Navy was supposed to be Heinrich's salvation, a place where the gentle prince could be forged into steel beneath the unforgiving North Sea winds. But what the royal family didn't anticipate was that the Navy would become something far more dangerous, a sanctuary where forbidden desires could flourish under the cover of masculine brotherhood and maritime tradition. In 1877, at 15, Heinrich was enrolled in the Imperial Naval Academy at Kiel. Naval records show that unlike his torturous palace education, he thrived in this environment. His instructors noted his natural aptitude for navigation and ship design, his ability to inspire loyalty among fellow cadets, and most tellingly, his unusual capacity for forming deep bonds with his shipmates. Contemporary accounts describe how Heinrich seemed transformed aboard ship, more confident, more himself, freed from the suffocating protocol of court life. The Navy offered Heinrich something the palace never could: legitimate reasons to spend months at sea surrounded by young men, sharing cramped quarters, forging relationships that naval tradition celebrated as essential to maritime brotherhood. According to surviving naval correspondence, Heinrich quickly gained a reputation as an officer who took unusual personal interest in the welfare of younger sailors and junior officers. His rise through the ranks was swift and, by most accounts, earned. He served aboard the corvette SMS Veneta, participated in training voyages to the Mediterranean, and demonstrated the kind of natural leadership that had been invisible at court. Naval historians suggest that Heinrich found in the maritime service not just professional success, but emotional refuge, a place where intense male relationships were not just tolerated, but considered essential to ship morale and naval effectiveness. But even as Heinrich carved out his sanctuary at sea, the royal family was orchestrating his return to dynastic duty. In 1885, marriage negotiations began with Princess Irene of Hesse, Queen Victoria's granddaughter, and a woman whose own tragic family history, her brother was the hemophiliac crown prince, made her sympathetic to royal suffering and secrets. The engagement, announced in 1888, was celebrated throughout German society as the perfect union of naval hero and royal princess. But court insiders, according to diplomatic memoirs published decades later, understood the marriage's true purpose: to silence persistent rumors about Heinrich's bachelor years at sea and provide the visual proof of heterosexual normalcy that royal families demanded. Princess Irene herself, historians believe, may have understood exactly what kind of marriage she was entering. Family letters suggest she was aware that her role was less romantic partner than loyal guardian of royal reputation. The wedding, scheduled for 1888, would mark not the beginning of Heinrich's happiness, but the moment when his carefully constructed naval refuge would be tested by the ultimate challenge of royal performance. As Heinrich prepared to exchange naval blues for wedding whites, those closest to him wondered whether the prince who had found himself at sea could survive the return to land, marriage, and the renewed scrutiny of a court that had never stopped watching, never stopped suspecting, never stopped waiting for the moment when his mask might finally slip. On May 24, 1888, in the chapel of Charlottenburg Palace, Prince Heinrich of Prussia married Princess Irene of Hesse in a ceremony that dazzled European society. The bride wore white silk and Honiton lace, the groom his naval dress uniform resplendent with gold braid. To the thousands who lined Berlin's streets, it was a fairy tale union of naval hero and imperial princess. But those closest to the royal family understood they were witnessing something far more complex, the most carefully orchestrated performance in German royal history. Princess Irene arrived at the altar carrying secrets as profound as her husband. As the daughter of Princess Alice and granddaughter of Queen Victoria, she had grown up surrounded by royal dysfunction, family tragedies, and the brutal realities of dynastic survival. Historians suggest that Irene possessed an understanding of royal marriages that went far beyond romantic fantasy. She knew she was entering a partnership built on mutual protection rather than passion. Their wedding night and honeymoon, spent aboard Heinrich's beloved naval vessels touring the Norwegian fjords, established the pattern that would define their 30-year marriage. According to surviving personal correspondence, they developed what royal biographers describe as a companionate marriage, one based on genuine affection, shared interests in music and literature, and most crucially, absolute discretion about the private arrangements that allowed both partners to find happiness within imperial constraints. The couple settled into a life that satisfied dynastic requirements while providing Heinrich the freedom he desperately needed. They produced 3 sons between 1889 and 1896, Crown Prince Wilhelm, Prince Sigismund, and Prince Heinrich, ensuring the continuation of the Prussian royal line and silencing those who questioned the marriage's authenticity. But court observers noted that Heinrich maintained his naval career with unusual dedication, spending long months at sea away from his family, returning to harbor with younger officers who commanded his particular attention and mentorship. Tell me in the comments, what part of this story shocks you the most so far? And if you're enjoying this documentary, make sure to subscribe for more stories like this. Princess Irene, meanwhile, cultivated her own interests and friendships, particularly with female artists and intellectuals who found sanctuary in her salon. Some historians argue that she understood Heinrich's nature from the beginning and deliberately constructed a marriage that protected them both from scandal while allowing for the emotional connections they needed to survive royal life. Their correspondence, portions of which survived in family archives, reveals a relationship of remarkable tenderness and mutual respect. They wrote to each other about books, music, their children's education, and the political pressures surrounding the imperial family. What they never discussed, at least in writing, were the rumors that continued to follow Heinrich through every port and palace. But by the 1890s, as Heinrich rose to command positions in the Imperial Navy, his carefully maintained balance between public duty and private desire was becoming increasingly difficult to sustain. The close relationships with junior officers that naval tradition had once protected were now attracting attention from court officials, diplomatic observers, and rival princes who saw Heinrich's secrets as weapons to be used against him. The question was no longer whether Heinrich could maintain his double life, but whether the protective walls he and Irene had built around their marriage could withstand the gathering storm. By the 1890s, Prince Heinrich had achieved something remarkable within the rigid hierarchy of the Imperial German Navy. He had created a sanctuary where forbidden relationships could flourish under the protective banner of naval brotherhood and military excellence. As he rose to command the Baltic Sea Squadron, Heinrich surrounded himself with a carefully chosen circle of young officers whose loyalty went far beyond professional duty and whose presence sparked whispers that would eventually reach the highest levels of the German Empire. Naval records from this period reveal Heinrich's unusual pattern of mentorship and advancement. Unlike other senior officers who maintained formal distance from their subordinates, Heinrich took personal interest in the careers of specific junior officers, often handpicking them for prestigious assignments aboard his flagship. Contemporary naval observers noted his tendency to promote beautiful young men of modest backgrounds to positions of unexpected influence within his command structure. Lieutenant Commander Erich von Falkenhayn became perhaps the most notorious example of Heinrich's special attention. According to surviving naval correspondence, Falkenhayn rose from obscure origins to become Heinrich's private aide-de-camp, traveling with the prince on diplomatic missions and sharing quarters that naval protocol typically reserved for officers of equal rank. Diplomatic memoirs published decades later describe Falkenhayn as strikingly handsome, unusually cultured for his modest background, and possessing an intimate knowledge of Heinrich's personal preferences that extended far beyond military matters. The prince's flagship, SMS Deutschland, became what naval historians suggest was effectively a floating court, where conventional military hierarchy bent to accommodate Heinrich's personal relationships. Officers who served under his command later recalled an atmosphere of unusual camaraderie, where the typical brutality of naval discipline gave way to something more refined and emotionally intimate. Heinrich insisted on shared dinners in his private quarters, evening discussions of literature and music, and social gatherings that naval tradition would normally have forbidden. But this carefully constructed world required constant vigilance to maintain. Heinrich understood that his naval sanctuary existed only as long as his professional competence remained unquestionable and his personal relationships could be explained within acceptable boundaries of military mentorship. He became a master of what might be called protective performance, ensuring that every appearance of impropriety had a plausible alternative explanation rooted in naval tradition or professional necessity. The system worked brilliantly until it attracted attention from the one person who possessed both the power and the motivation to destroy it: Heinrich's increasingly unstable older brother, Kaiser Wilhelm II. By the late 1890s, court observers noted growing tension between the imperial brothers, fueled by Wilhelm's jealousy of Heinrich's naval popularity and his growing awareness of rumors surrounding his brother's private life. Wilhelm, who had always resented Heinrich's natural charisma and military competence, began receiving detailed reports about the unusual relationships aboard his brother's ships. What had once been protected by naval tradition and family loyalty was becoming a political liability that threatened not just Heinrich's career, but the reputation of the entire Hohenzollern dynasty. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test whether blood loyalty could survive imperial paranoia, and whether Heinrich's carefully constructed double life could withstand scrutiny from the most dangerous enemy of all, his own family. The relationship between Kaiser Wilhelm II and Prince Heinrich had always been poisoned by jealousy, but by the turn of the century, it had become something far more dangerous, a weapon that could destroy both brothers and the empire they served. Wilhelm's increasing mental instability, documented by court physicians and diplomatic observers, created a volatile environment where Heinrich's secrets were simultaneously more protected and more threatened than ever before. Contemporary accounts reveal Wilhelm as a man consumed by contradictions regarding his younger brother. Court memoirs describe how the Kaiser would publicly praise Heinrich's naval achievements while privately seething with resentment over his brother's natural charisma and military competence. Unlike Wilhelm, whose aggressive personality alienated officers and diplomats alike, Heinrich possessed the gift of inspiring genuine loyalty, a quality that drove his brother to fits of barely controlled rage. The Kaiser's famous volatility, which diplomatic historians suggest may have stemmed from brain damage suffered during his difficult birth, made him simultaneously Heinrich's greatest protector and most dangerous enemy. Wilhelm's unpredictable nature meant that anyone who threatened his family faced imperial wrath. but it also meant that Heinrich lived in constant fear of triggering his brother's paranoid suspicion about dynastic loyalty and royal reputation. According to surviving diplomatic correspondence, European courts were well aware of the growing tension between the German imperial brothers. British intelligence reports from this period, declassified decades later, describe Heinrich as walking a tightrope between family loyalty and personal survival, while Wilhelm was characterized as increasingly obsessed with controlling every aspect of royal behavior and reputation. The situation became particularly dangerous during naval ceremonies and public appearances, where both brothers were required to appear together. Court observers noted Wilhelm's tendency to publicly humiliate Heinrich through cutting remarks about naval expenses, questioning his brother's dedication to German interests, and making veiled comments about the unusual loyalties that seemed to flourish within the naval command structure. But Wilhelm's erratic behavior also provided Heinrich with unexpected protection. The Kaiser's well-documented affairs, his inflammatory public statements, and his increasingly bizarre political decisions created such constant scandal that Heinrich's more subtle transgressions remained overshadowed by his brother's spectacular indiscretions. Palace insiders suggested that Wilhelm's chaos served as protective camouflage for Heinrich's carefully hidden private life. The dynamic reached a critical point during the Morocco crisis of 1905, when Heinrich's diplomatic mission to the United States put him in direct conflict with Wilhelm's aggressive foreign policy. According to State Department records, Heinrich advocated for peaceful resolution, while Wilhelm pushed for military confrontation, a disagreement that exposed deep philosophical differences between the brothers and further strained their already fragile relationship. Heinrich understood that his survival depended on maintaining the delicate balance between professional competence and personal invisibility. He needed to remain valuable enough to the empire that Wilhelm couldn't destroy him, but not so prominent that he attracted the kind of scrutiny that would expose his secrets. It was a dance that required perfect timing and absolute control. But as Europe moved toward the catastrophe of World War I, that careful balance was about to be shattered by forces beyond any royal brother's control, and Heinrich's hidden world would face its ultimate test. The year 1907 brought Prince Heinrich's carefully constructed double life to the edge of catastrophe, when a series of incidents threatened to expose secrets that could have toppled the German Empire. Behind the gilded doors of Prussian palaces, a desperate campaign was underway to suppress stories that would make Heinrich the most scandalous royal in European history. The crisis began with what court records euphemistically termed the Potsdam Incident. According to surviving intelligence reports, Heinrich was discovered in a compromising situation with a young cavalry officer in the private quarters of Sanssouci Palace during a state reception. The details remain deliberately vague in official documentation, but diplomatic memoirs suggest that only quick intervention by palace security prevented what one observer called a scandal that would have made the Dreyfus affair look like a garden party. Count Philipp zu Eulenburg, one of Kaiser Wilhelm's closest advisors and himself rumored to be part of what historians call the Liebenberg Circle of aristocrats with unconventional sexual preferences, became Heinrich's unlikely protector. Eulenburg understood the mechanisms needed to suppress royal scandals because he had perfected them for his own survival. According to intelligence files declassified decades later, Eulenburg orchestrated an elaborate cover-up involving witness intimidation, strategic transfers of military personnel, and payments to ensure silence. The palace's crisis management system revealed how many people were aware of Heinrich's secret life. Court officials, military commanders, diplomatic staff, and even foreign intelligence services had documented evidence of the prince's relationships with men. Yet a conspiracy of silence protected him, not from loyalty or affection, but because exposing Heinrich would have triggered investigations that could have destroyed dozens of other prominent figures who shared his inclinations. But the protective system faced its greatest test when blackmail attempts began reaching the highest levels of government. According to surviving correspondence between court officials, at least 3 separate groups tried to extort money from Heinrich by threatening to publicize evidence of his relationships with male officers. Palace security chief von Kessel wrote in classified reports that the threats were becoming too numerous and too specific to contain indefinitely. The most dangerous incident occurred during Heinrich's 1908 visit to St. Petersburg, where Russian intelligence services, according to declassified documents, attempted to compromise the prince through honey trap operations involving attractive young men. Foreign ministry records suggest that Heinrich narrowly avoided a scandal that would have given Russia devastating leverage over German naval strategy. Princess Irene had become an expert in what historians describe as protective performance. She appeared at Heinrich's side during every public crisis, provided alibis for his absences, and cultivated relationships with journalists who could be trusted to suppress unfavorable stories. Her correspondence reveals a woman who had transformed from naive bride into sophisticated political operative. By 1910, the protective system was showing dangerous signs of strain. Too many people knew too many secrets, and too many near exposures had occurred for current arrangements to remain sustainable. What none of them anticipated was that the greatest threat to Heinrich's secret would come not from blackmailers or foreign spies, but from the apocalyptic war that was about to consume everything they had worked so desperately to protect. When the first shots of World War I shattered the summer peace of 1914, Prince Heinrich found himself trapped in a nightmare that would destroy not only his brother's empire, but the entire protective system that had shielded his secrets for decades. The war that Kaiser Wilhelm II had pushed toward with such reckless enthusiasm would become the instrument of Heinrich's exposure, as revolution swept away the aristocratic networks that had made his double life possible. Heinrich's position during the war was uniquely precarious. As commander of the Baltic Fleet, he held genuine military responsibility that kept him away from political intrigues consuming Berlin, but also isolated him from the family protection that had previously deflected scandal. Naval records from this period show a man under enormous strain, trying to maintain professional competence while his personal world disintegrated around him. The first cracks in Heinrich's protective wall appeared in 1916, when financial pressures forced the palace to reduce payments to the network of servants, officers, and court officials who had maintained silence about royal indiscretions. According to surviving correspondence between court administrators, several former staff members began approaching German newspapers with stories about Heinrich's private life, sensing that the old rules of royal immunity were collapsing. Revolutionary fervor created an entirely new category of danger. Socialist newspapers, which had previously been suppressed by imperial censorship, began publishing exposés about royal decadence and moral corruption. Intelligence reports from this period, declassified decades later, describe frantic efforts by remaining palace officials to suppress stories that would have made Heinrich the symbol of everything Germans had learned to hate about their former rulers. The abdication of Kaiser Wilhelm II in November 1918 marked the end of Heinrich's world as he had known it. Contemporary accounts describe the panic that swept through German aristocratic circles as protective systems that had shielded their secrets for generations vanished overnight. Foreign intelligence services, freed from diplomatic constraints, began publishing detailed dossiers about German royal family scandals that they had collected but never used while the monarchy remained in power. Princess Irene, who had spent 30 years perfecting the art of protecting her husband's reputation, found herself powerless against the revolutionary tide. Her correspondence from this period reveals a woman in despair, watching helplessly as newspapers published increasingly specific allegations about Heinrich's relationships with male officers. The carefully constructed narrative of their happy marriage could no longer be sustained in a world where royal authority had evaporated. Most devastating were the revelations coming from Heinrich's former naval colleagues, men who had once been bound by military honor and imperial loyalty to protect their commander's secrets. Memoir after memoir appeared, written by officers eager to distance themselves from the defeated regime, describing the unusual atmosphere aboard Heinrich's ships and the special relationships that flourished under his command. By 1919, Heinrich was no longer a prince protecting state secrets, but a private citizen whose past was being dissected in newspapers across Europe and America. The revolution had achieved what decades of blackmail attempts could never accomplish. It stripped away every layer of protection and left him completely exposed. But the greatest revelation was yet to come, as Heinrich discovered that survival in the post-imperial world would require even more dangerous compromises than anything he had faced as a royal prince. In the ruins of the German Empire, Prince Heinrich discovered that survival without royal protection required courage he had never needed to summon before. Stripped of his titles, naval command, and the elaborate machinery that had shielded his secrets for decades, he faced the most dangerous phase of his life, learning how to be authentically himself in a world that had grown more hostile to men like him. The post-war period brought Heinrich face to face with the brutal reality that his previous life had been built on privilege and power that no longer existed. According to surviving family correspondence, he and Princess Irene were forced to sell most of their properties and live on dramatically reduced means. But more devastating than financial hardship was the social isolation that followed their fall from grace. The network of aristocratic friends, military colleagues, and court officials who had once provided both companionship and protection had either fled Germany, died in the war, or distanced themselves from the disgraced former royals. Yet historians suggest that Heinrich's response to this exile was both surprising and revealing. Rather than retreating into bitter solitude, he seemed to experience what some biographers describe as a kind of liberation. Free from the constant performance required of royal life, he began forming relationships that were more honest and emotionally authentic than anything he had known during his years as a prince. Contemporary accounts from the 1920s describe Heinrich maintaining a small circle of companions that included writers, artists, and younger men who shared his interest in literature and music. These relationships, according to memoirs published decades later, were conducted with discretion, born of necessity, but also with openness that would have been impossible during his royal years. Neighbors in his modest villa outside Berlin reported seeing Heinrich entertaining male guests for extended visits, hosting intimate dinners, and taking walks with companions whose presence seemed to provide genuine happiness. But even in reduced circumstances, Heinrich could not entirely escape the dangers that had haunted his royal life. Intelligence files from the Weimar Republic, declassified in the 1970s, reveal that former imperial officials continued to monitor Heinrich's activities, partly from concern about his potential political activities, but also because his private life remained a source of embarrassing gossip that could be used against other former aristocrats. The most serious incident occurred in 1925, when Heinrich's relationship with a young poet named Marcus Friedmann attracted the attention of right-wing newspapers eager to discredit the former imperial family. According to police records, threats were made against both men, and Heinrich was forced to temporarily leave Berlin until the scandal subsided. The incident, documented in surviving correspondence between Heinrich and his remaining family members, reveals a man who was no longer willing to deny his nature, but understood that authenticity could bring violence. Princess Irene, now in her 60s and facing health challenges, continued to provide what protection she could. Family letters suggest that their relationship had evolved into something even more profound than their earlier partnership. A bond forged through shared survival and mutual understanding that transcended conventional marriage boundaries. But time was running out for both of them, and Heinrich's final years would be marked by tragedy that would test whether love could triumph over forces that had spent a lifetime trying to destroy him. On April 20th, 1929, in a modest villa, far from the palaces where he had once commanded attention and fear, Prince Heinrich of Prussia died quietly at 66. The man who had spent a lifetime navigating treacherous waters between royal duty and authentic love passed away not as a prince, but as something rarer, a human being who had finally learned to live as himself, even when that truth could have destroyed him. The tragedy that marked Heinrich's final years was not a single dramatic event, but the slow erosion of everything that had once made his double life sustainable. According to surviving family correspondence, Princess Irene's health had been declining since 1927, leaving Heinrich increasingly isolated and vulnerable. The woman who had spent 4 decades protecting his secrets, managing his public image, and providing the emotional partnership that made his survival possible was fading. And with her went Heinrich's last connection to the world that had shaped him. Contemporary accounts from their household staff, documented in interviews conducted decades later, describe the final years as a period of profound tenderness between two people who had created something unprecedented. A marriage built not on romantic love, but on mutual protection, shared survival, and deep understanding. They spent long hours reading together, listening to music, and receiving visits from friends who had remained loyal through scandal, revolution, and exile. Heinrich's story reveals something far more significant than the tragedy of one man's hidden life. His existence exposed the fundamental hypocrisy of a society that demanded impossible choices from those who dared to love differently. The same aristocratic world that celebrated masculine military brotherhood and intimate camaraderie among officers became murderous when those relationships crossed invisible boundaries that were never clearly defined, only brutally enforced. What makes Heinrich's story particularly haunting is how little changed after his death. The mechanisms used to suppress his secrets, intimidation, payments, selective memory, and willful blindness, continued operating long after there was anyone left to protect. Royal biographers, military historians, and family archivists spent decades ensuring that Heinrich remained what he had been in life, a carefully managed absence, a story everyone knew, but no one told. Yet Heinrich's legacy lives on in ways his persecutors never intended. Every young person who struggles with identity in hostile environments carries something of his courage. Every family that learns to love beyond social boundaries continues his revolution. Every society that moves toward accepting authenticity over performance honors the price he paid for being himself in a world that demanded he disappear. His greatest victory was not survival, though he managed that longer than most, but the simple, radical act of refusing to be ashamed of who he was. In an age that treated love as a political crime, Heinrich insisted on the fundamental dignity of authentic emotion. In a world that measured worth through conformity, he chose truth, even when it meant exile and danger. The man they once called a scandal has become something far more powerful, a reminder that love, in all its forms, will always be more durable than the forces that try to destroy it. If this story has moved you or opened your eyes to hidden histories that deserve to be remembered, please subscribe, because the courage to be authentic should never be forgotten.